Welcome, everyone, to our multi-platform service for the Unitarian Church of Staten Island. We're so grateful to have you join us here on this beautiful winter day. For those joining in person, it's wonderful to have you with us. Please be sure to wear your mask throughout the service and to maintain social distancing, as I see you are doing in the parish, in the sanctuary. Those attending in person are invited to the parish hall for in-person coffee hour after the service. But keep in mind that COVID cases are definitely rising in Staten Island and throughout the city, and we're at a higher alert level now. You might want to reconsider with this information whether or not you want to join us in the parish hall for hospitality, though I think we can all still take measures to stay distant and enjoy the hospitality that Ruth and Christine have provided while still staying safe. But we do want to caution you that things have definitely changed since even last Sunday. So for those joining us online, we send special greetings and hope you take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat box this morning. After the service, you are invited to a virtual coffee hour. Please take a moment to silence your mobile devices at this time and let us prepare for this morning's service.
In June of 2022, our congregation adopted the 8th principle, adding a new principle to the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism. It reads, "We covenant to affirm and promote, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions." Unitarian Universalism has no dogma, but our principles reflect our aspirations, how we try to live. Today, in remembrance of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., members of our Social Justice Committee will read from his Ware lecture at the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly in 1996 and reflect on his words as we consider what the 8th principle means for our congregation. We recognize that our congregation is mostly European American in membership and leadership, even as we live in a diverse community. This congregation was formed by abolitionists who stood against slavery. Through the years, it has engaged in many, many activities that stood on the side of love and against oppression in all its manifestations. Now we find ourselves in an era of increased awareness of white supremacy and racism, yet growing backlash. How do we journey towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions? What does that mean to each of us? How do we accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions? We cannot answer those questions this morning, but hopefully this service will provide each of us with some seeds for thought that will feed our future discussions on how to do that.
I invite you to join me now in lighting our chalice. You can find the words to the affirmation in your order of service. In the search for truth, in the spirit of love, we unite for worship and fellowship. As an extension of lighting our chalice, I want to light 3 candles and say the names of 3 individuals affected by police brutality, knowing, of course, that we cannot say the names of all of those affected. We light a candle for the life of Elon O'Neill Foster. We light a candle for the life of Takar Smith. And we light a candle for the life of Aaron Lamont Swan, Jr. May these lights be a symbol of our commitment to continue the work of racial justice and to proclaim Black Lives Matter.
Please turn to number 157 in your great hymnal. Let's rise and sing step by step along this march.
Now is the time in our service for joys and sorrows. If you are visiting us for the first time, this is the time when you can introduce yourself. For those here in the sanctuary, we invite you to raise your hand, and I will give you the microphone, and I ask that you say your name before sharing what is in your heart. For those joining us online, we invite you to type into the chat your joys and sorrows. Ben will then read them aloud. We invite you also to share what is in your heart.
Hey, I'm Dave. I know I've been in conversations with people about the tension between using this time as an announcement time, but this is actually a joy. I've an announcement. I've been very happy to be part of our little meditation circle that most of you know about, but I just thought I'd make an announcement because we are meeting again at 12:30 in the library. And while I'm at it, next week, since there's another meeting here, those who are not in that meeting will be meeting downstairs in the basement. So I just wanted to let you all know so that in case you wanted to come, please join us.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Nancy Ashenpoku. It's not my first time here, but it's nice to be back. I live in New Jersey now, and when Virginia Allen asked me to come today, it was a pleasure, and I thank you.
Hi, I'm Randy. Friday was my 72nd birthday. Went over to my brother's yesterday, had a very nice time. When I was a kid, my kindergarten teacher made me a stuffed turtle that I had for years and years, Myrtle the turtle. So one of the gifts my brother gave me was a Vermont teddy bear turtle.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marjorie, and I'm a couple of weeks late, but it was my mom's birthday 2 weeks ago, and she turned 88. Doesn't she look beautiful? Okay. All right. Happy birthday, Mom. Okay.
Hi, I'm Ruth, and I have a joy this morning. It is my great joy to see two of my very dearest friends in the pews this morning, my darling Marjorie, of course, and my pal, Robin. So here we are. Yay. Hi, good morning. I share your joy. Good to see Robin, and it's good to see Marjorie's mom, and happy birthday. So I'm Chris, I'm the president of the board, and I've got some board comments to make, and I'm going to consider them both joys. While Janet Mahoney has decided to leave the board, you know, we thank her for her service, and we're just glad that you have to find out where your best fit is. And Janet felt that there were other areas of the church where she would best fit, and we're totally cool with that. That's great. We're glad that she was spending some time with us. And then we have an addition to the board. We've been without our church secretary, the board secretary, for a little bit since Linda's resignation, and Carol Lodato is going to be joining the board as our secretary. So we're all happy about that. And then the other comment I wanted to make is we decided that we're going to try to start a little change up in the hospitality, and that while we're very good at recycling some stuff, we're not doing the food scraps. So it might be a little bit of like, you know, feeling our way through it, but you'll see some information in the parish hall about that, and like directions about how to do that. So we're not looking to torture anybody. We're looking to help, you know, climate change. And we think it's like one small way that we can do. If you're not doing it at home, which is also something you might want to consider, I'm happy to chat with you about that. But we feel that given the beliefs of our congregation, it's the least that we can do.
Good morning, I'm Sarah Rachel. So next month, on February 22nd, my husband David and I will be leaving for India. We have not been there in 3 years because of the virus, and we're certainly looking forward to going back because we were going every year. So this will be like our farewell tour to a country that we love, where David has family, and we have a lot of friends who are like our family. So we'll be looking forward to that. All goes well. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. You're absolutely right. Time for the people in the chat.
Okay, we have Gary and Godfrey saying the joy is they're going to get to go on vacation for a few days. Vivian Vassar says hi. Mark and Delia have COVID. They're getting better now. Thankfully, she did not get sick.
Thank you, everyone. We are grateful for all the joys and sorrows shared, and for all those that have gone unspoken. May the attention and care we give each other and those beyond this space remind us that we are not alone. So Ruth last week announced that we are reinstituting a longer meditation. I'll remind you that we start the meditation with 3 deep breaths taken together after I ring the bell, and that we'll be meditating for approximately, I think it's 4 minutes. Let me turn this off so we don't have 2 mics going. I'm surprised that's working. There we go. So once I ring the bell, we'll do 3 deep breaths and begin. I neglected to tell you that we're using the same prompt all month, and that what I should have told you before you began meditating was that our prompt is life is available only in the present moment. I hope you found some of that present moment during the last 4 minutes. We will now have our reading.
Good morning. Dreams by Langston Hughes. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow.
Now is the time in our order of service where we take an offering. We know it is the gifts of all of us that help support our ability to thrive and gather. For those online, links and instructions will be posted in the chat. You can mail a check or donate through the PayPal giving page on our website. Please give as generously as you can. Our offering will now be greatly received. Gratefully received. And grateful.
Walking Now, please turn in the grave and open number 170. We are a gentle, angry people. 170. Please rise.
This is probably going to have to change site as we go through these readings because a number of us are going to be addressing you today with readings and reflections from the 1966 lecture of Martin Luther King to the Unitarian Universalist Association in 1966. So that was a long time ago, 57 years ago. I'm going to start the reading with a paragraph and then a reflection, and then we'll go on to the next person. I would like to use as a subject the church remaining awake during a great revolution. One of the great misfortunes of history is that all too many individuals and institutions find themselves in a great period of change and yet fail to achieve the new attitudes and outlooks that the new situation demands. There is nothing more tragic than to sleep through a revolution, and there can be no gainsaying of the fact that a social revolution is taking place in our world today. We see it in other nations. in the demise of colonialism. We see it in our own nation, in the struggle against racial segregation and discrimination. And as we notice this struggle, we are aware of the fact that a social revolution is taking place in our midst. Victor Hugo once said that there is nothing more powerful in all the world than an idea whose time has come. The idea whose time has come today is the idea of freedom and human dignity. And so all over the world, we see something of a freedom explosion. And this reveals to us that we are in the midst of revolutionary times. An older order is passing away and a new order is coming into being. Reflecting on this, I thought how revolution is such a very fraught word for Americans, unless it is put into the context of the 1776 American Revolution and the worship of our founding fathers. I love that Martin Luther King Jr. puts his 1966 audience right smack in the middle of the revolution that was going on then. The revolution of anti-colonialism, freedom, and human dignity. If he were here today, he would be pushing us, just as he pushed his audience more than 56 years ago, to see clearly that what we are in the middle right now. What are we in the middle of right now? My question to myself and to you: are we in the middle of a revolution here now in 2023, or are we in the middle of a counter revolution where neo-fascists, white supremacists, and many aspects of capitalism are pushing back against progress that was made on human rights, trying to address the climate crisis and promoting peace? To me, it feels like we are in the throes of a counter-revolution. Of course, I see many efforts looking for ways to get back the revolutionary momentum, and many of these efforts have been amazing. We are indebted to Black Lives Matter, reproductive rights, prison, immigration, and climate crisis activists who are in the trenches every day. This is great, and I know we all cheer their work. Looking at myself and my UU home here, even as I cheer on the activists in the street, I also think I am seeking a safe haven from the counter-revolution. Because yes, the Unitarian Church of Staten Island is a safe haven from bigotry and hate for many Staten Islanders, even if they are not sitting in our pews every Sunday morning. I have to wonder if Martin Luther King were here today, would he be warning us against staying in our safe haven too much and warn us not to sleep through the counter-revolution which is happening now in 2023? And now our next speakers, Eric and John, are coming up.
This is the excerpt from the speech from MLK. I'm sure that we all agree that the church has a major role to play in this period of social change. I would like to suggest some of the things that the church must continually do in order to remain awake through this revolution. First, we are challenged to instill within the people of our congregations a world perspective. The world in which we live is geographically one. Now, more and more, we are challenged to make it one in terms of brotherhood. What I think Martin Luther King Jr. means by being geographically one is that we are one global community. What this means is that our liberation is tied to the liberation of people around the world. It is tied to the liberation of women in Iran, which is tied to the liberation of farmers in South America, which is tied to the liberation of 5-year-olds dying from mining cobalt in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I think of how MLK saw his liberation tied with the people in Vietnam and how he supported the work of Vietnamese activist Thich Nhat Hanh, even nominating him for a Nobel Peace Prize. So what does this mean today when we, in our own community of Staten Island, are so divided and do not support one another? On one hand, we have the people protesting the Children's Museum's Drag Story Hour and yelling about critical race theory. This is clearly wrong and sows division. On the other hand, how are we, in our own blindness, judgments, and criticisms of others, contributing to this global brotherhood, especially in our own community? The 8th principle talks about spiritual wholeness and dismantling racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. Yes, the other people need to change. And we also need to look inside ourselves and see how we are judging others and need to change. We have to destroy the notion of the bad other, or how will we get to this global brotherhood? The spiritual journey is about working on ourselves, because when we only focus on trying to change others, we get into the same fights and have the same outcomes, becoming more and more divided. Our own faults aren't obvious to ourselves, but we need to look inside of us and see how we can change, and in this way, get closer to a global brotherhood. Thich Nhat Hanh said, "We will always blame and condemn those we feel are responsible for wars and social injustice without recognizing the degree of violence in ourselves. We must work on ourselves and also with those we condemn if we want to have a real impact." All of the landmasses on this earth today used to be a part of the supercontinent called Pangaea. But millions of years ago, the tectonic plates and their interactions caused the great supercontinent to break up into the continents we know today. Now, how is this relevant to this excerpt of MLK's speech? It's because we are the continents. Our communities and all of the communities of the world are the continents, and the tectonic plates are the othering and judging that communities do to other communities due to their political, spiritual, and cultural differences. The tectonic plates of each community clash and battle with other communities' tectonic plates and cause the communities to break apart due to their differences, and from the gap gushes in a sea of othering. As the continents or communities grow further apart, they eventually lose sight of each other's views and perspectives, and they're too closed-minded to cross the ocean of judgment and find out. In this part of his speech, MLK is calling for things to change. He's calling for Pangaea to form again. He's calling for communities to cross oceans, strive to truly understand other perspectives, and recognize how each community isn't so different after all. We also must look inside ourselves. Everyone is right in some ways and wrong in some ways. Due to a cognitive bias known as confirmation bias, we don't usually take the time to look into other perspectives. Instead of using our reason to check our beliefs, we use it to bolster our beliefs, even the wrong ones, with even the most ridiculous of arguments. It's essential that we look into ourselves and call out our own shortcomings where we misjudge and denigrate others. This is not to say that discussion and conflict is all bad. When tectonic plates clash, they don't always pull things apart, but they can create mountains. And from the mountaintops, we can see so much more. If you have a debate with open-mindedness and respect, you can come to a better understanding with another and unlock a whole new viewpoint of the world. As communities come closer together through understanding other perspectives, calling out their own misguided views, and debating with dignity and openness, the oceans of hatred part as Pangaea reforms, and humanity beholds the sight of the great supercontinent and all of its diversity. This is what MLK was advocating for. This is what the 8th principle is advocating for, a spiritual journey towards oneness where no one is oppressed and everyone is included. for understanding and respect for your fellow humans, for working things out through debates and discussion, for a new Pangea. Martin Luther King said, "Our goal is to create a beloved community, and this will require a qualitative change in our souls, as well as a quantitative change in our lives." Thank you.
I will continue with an excerpt from the Ware lecture. Secondly, it is necessary for the church to reaffirm over and over again the essential immorality of racial segregation. Any church which affirms the morality of segregation is sleeping through the revolution. We must make it clear that segregation, whether it's in the public schools, in housing, or in recreational facilities, or in the church itself, is morally wrong and sinful. There's another thing that the church must do to remain awake. We must get rid of the notion once and for all that there are superior and inferior races. It's out of this notion that the whole doctrine of white supremacy came into being. And the church must take a stand through religious education and other channels to direct the popular mind at this point. For there are some people who still believe this strange doctrine. I take from his suggestion that to be awake as people and as a congregation, our focus must consistently be on our church and on our public institutions on every level. It is not an accident that Dr. King's emphasis on staying awake to the evils of segregation and white supremacy, or staying woke, as it is now called, that this idea is now on the attack by the right. We know that the evidence of structural and institutional racism and white supremacy can be seen everywhere. But Dr. King's speech is a reminder that we must continue to shine a light on that evidence. I like Dr. King's suggestion that we should use our church, both the UU denomination and its status, and our little church here in Staten Island, which has, I think, great credibility in the community. And we should use that credibility to engage in dialogue with other churches and build solidarity with other organizations doing justice work. Reverend Pershing acknowledged all that we do as a congregation in terms of social justice activities in the community in her service on Christian nationalism last week. And we do show up, we do. And I agree with the notion that we can use our RE program and our church services to engage with those interested in beloved community, solidarity, and dialogue, the kind of work that the eighth principle requires. As membership co-chair and membership chair over the years here in this church, I know we are challenged to seek out new faces as members so that we can thrive, continue to thrive. Creating beloved community might be just what is needed to bring more people, all those interested in UUism, through our door. We can also, as individuals right now, start to make beloved community each in our own way, not just through the Social Justice Committee, but through all of our opportunities every day. A decades-long Harvard study that has been getting a lot of play recently on happiness found that happiness seems to derive not from our status or education level or our wealth, but from the strength and warmth of our relationships. So if we want more diverse and multicultural membership, We can do both big and small things individually and together as a congregation to strengthen our relationships and social ties. As we develop what beloved community means for the congregation in terms of specific programs, we can each do our part in the community in whatever groups we're already in to let people know that we are Unitarians and that we have an interest in building beloved community, to explain what that means. These weak social ties will inevitably get stronger over time, and we as a society and as individuals can be made better and maybe even happier by consciously working on those ties. The need for a big, beautiful, diverse, multicultural, beloved community is great, and creating it could make a difference in our future. We as a denomination did not particularly heed Dr. King's call back in 1966. And I don't have the answers about how we get there, but I do ask each and every one of you to do or continue to do what you can individually to make it real. I ask each and every one of you to think about what the congregation can do together to make such a beloved community a reality.
I'm going to read my inspirational paragraphs from Dr. King. It is necessary to get rid of one or two myths if we're really going to engage in this kind of action program. One is the notion that legislation is not effective in bringing about the changes that we need in human relations. It may be true that morality cannot be legislated, but behavior can be regulated. It may be true that law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless. The law cannot make a man love me, but it can restrain him from lynching me. And I think that's pretty important also. And so while the law may not change the hearts of men, it can change the habits of men. So it is necessary for the church to support strong, meaningful civil rights legislation. Excuse me. A second myth that we must deal with is that of exaggerated progress. Certainly, we've made progress in race relations. And I think that we can all glory that things are better today than they were 10 years ago, or even 3 years ago. We should be proud of the steps we've made to rid our nation of this great evil of racial segregation and discrimination. On the other hand, we must realize that the plant of freedom is only a bud, and not yet a flower. The Negro was freer in 1966, but is not yet free. The Negro knows more dignity today than he has known in any period of his history in this country, but he is not yet equal. There are still stubborn, difficult problems to deal with all over the country. I wrote my piece and worked it before Keenan Anderson was killed by the LAPD a few days ago. So we have to keep him in mind, as we reflect on what we can do as a community, because it shows, as Dr. King said, a bud, not a flower. And as others pointed out, we're in the midst of a backlash. Let me express my gratitude for being allowed to speak today. I'm very honored by this opportunity, especially since I believe that white supremacy and anti-Blackness is the core of the American enterprise. Dr. King's beloved community had moral values that include feeding the hungry, using diplomacy rather than war, housing the houseless, and so on. It's more than a concept or something idealized. It's concrete and specific. It's a demand for action. These things are within our power and we can manifest them. The ideas are not irrational. I think a majority of people want other suffering to diminish and want peace. In a 2020 survey, it was found that 45% of people favored universal basic income, which is a fair amount of people that would be absurd to contemplate about 10 years ago. So this is the dream part of King's expansive dream, the idea of equality and human needs being met universally. And we have tiny pieces of this dream: food stamps, Head Start. We recognize that society is not meeting needs. And here I'll mention two things that I think are extremely important in order to build the beloved community. There's been a multi-generational theft from Black people, as well as concerted effort to suppress the ability for Black people to achieve wealth, be that at home ownership via redlining, business ownership via offering loans or educational entertainment. It's undeniable. We know white families are many, many more times have more wealth than Black families on average. Poverty has lifelong effects on health, education, maintaining a job, and of course, life expectancy. For something that's so widespread and sweeping, for a large segment of humanity, I think we need something widespread and sweeping to address it. And that would be reparations, specifically financial reparations. I don't know what the form is. I'm not sure. I don't know what would be most impactful or helpful, but I think financial equity is a substantial pillar of the beloved community. That's something that I think we should bear considering supporting. Another barrier to building the beloved community is the carceral state. And by that, I mean the police and the prison system, which I think in their present form should be completely abolished. We know that the police and judges are more punitive against Black people, harass them constantly for things that white people get away with and they are free to do. We know that Black people are killed by the police at a greater rate. I would just say that this year, the LAPD killed 3 people of color, and it's the 15th of January. We know that Black people make up 40% of imprisoned New Yorkers, even though they're only 15% of the general population. And this is a huge issue that could be many sermons. But we're the most incarcerating country in the world for the 2021 prison index. So as Unitarian Universalists, we have a collective concern for society. We recognize the needs. And as a collective, we could build more. So what's to stop us? Big corporations, weapons manufacturers, individual billionaires with self-aggrandizing agendas? Yes, yes, and yes. There are more obstacles than these obvious villains. The persistent and active racism in our institutions and systems forestall much progress. And I have to say that some white people have their identity invested in racism. I will refer to Jonathan Metzl's book, Dying of Whiteness, and this emblematic anecdote of a 41-year-old white man dying of liver cancer with no insurance. And he declared he'd rather die than sign up for Obamacare because he didn't want any tax dollars to go to welfare queens. He didn't survive his disease. I'm not sure we can change everyone or even anyone. These beliefs are ingrained in America, but this is what's so crucial and concrete about Dr. King's plans. He said, it may be true that morality cannot be legislated, but behavior can be regulated. That's the bottom line. That has to give us hope and purpose. We can't despair about racists. What we need to do is get angry about injustice and use that power to change laws. That's concrete. That's specific. We believe the beloved community is possible. And there are glimpses of it here and there. Not nearly enough. And as others have pointed out, there's always a backlash, and we're in a huge one right now. But thousands of activists in every community are pushing this system down, and we can lend our power to them individually, collectively. We should be angry about injustice. We should be angry about inequality. That's standing on the side of love for our fellow humans. Get angry and organize.
From Dr. King. Modern psychology has a word that has become common. It is the word maladjusted. We read a great deal about it. It has a ringing cry of modern child psychology, and certainly we all want to live the well-adjusted and avoid the neurotic and schizophrenic personalities. But I must say to you this evening, my friends, there are some things in our nation and in our world to which I'm proud to be maladjusted. And I call upon you to be maladjusted and all people of goodwill to be maladjusted to these things until the good society is realized. I never intend to adjust myself to segregation and discrimination. I never intend to become adjusted to religious bigotry. I never intend to adjust myself to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few and leave millions of people perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of prosperity. I must honestly say, however much criticism it brings, that I never intend to adjust myself to the madness of militarism and to the self-defeating effects of physical violence. I believe that each of us, in our own ways, came to this church because, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we are proud to be maladjusted. Unlike many religions that promote the status quo, our faith has for over 150 years provided a place for spiritual growth for those who cannot abide by oppression, injustice, and racism, those seeking a different world. Martin Luther King Jr. called it a good society, a beloved community, a dream from his imagination, a positive intention. The flip side to that maladjustment, we each have a vision of beloved community that springs from our own maladjustment with today's society. Our Black Lives Matter committee read and discussed the book Stamped from the Beginning. Ibram X. Kendi spoke of the beginnings of a powerful backlash, the counter-revolution Sally spoke of. He sought to show that, quote, racist progress has consistently followed racial progress from the birth of our nation. Understanding that, what he termed dual duality, prepared him for, quote, Trump and all the other Trumps that could rise one day on the time-worn back of bigotry. I believe that it is that dueling duality between the causes of our maladjustment and our vision of beloved community that provides the basis to consider how we manifest the eighth principle. I was listening to Paula Cole Jones, a co-author of the eighth principle, and she impressed upon me that while we as individual Unitarian Universalists and as a social justice committee have engaged in innumerable actions against oppression and will continue to, adopting the eighth principle isn't just about social justice action, although that's obviously an expression of living our principles. Adopting this principle as a congregation speaks to an aspiration for our congregational spiritual life, a collective agreement to center theological teachings, readings, music, presentations that provide a spiritual lens to more clearly see our beloved community and to be able to name the flip side. Unlike many religions, UUs do not have a theology of evil. We don't look at evil as some demonic supernatural power. But with the eighth principle, we're called to identify collective negative action growing in our world, to undermine voting rights, to attack immigrants, to continue mass incarceration, and more. Identify it for what it is, evil. It matters if our country or community is run or directed by negative forces. And we can't be passive about it. We must be spiritually engaged. The principle calls us to pay attention, not to sleep, but to study, worship, and practice to promote a spiritual awakening in the bridge between now and what is possible. Paula's vision of beloved community involves deep multiculturalism, developing a new consciousness that makes our services and activities more relevant in today's world. It's about putting an eighth principle lens on everything we do with the intention of bending that arc of history. Many congregations have already begun adding to the diversity of the theology and music in their services. Others start their services with a statement that acknowledges that they live on stolen land and are studying the histories of oppression in their local communities. Some have started eighth principle circles as sacred spaces for beloved conversation, sharing stories of oppression and learning from each other's wisdom and experience. Let us consider how our positive intentions speak to us as a congregation, seeking to overcome oppression and racism in all its forms through love and beloved community.
This stool is certainly helpful. And these are the conclusive words of Dr. King from 1966. And we can sing, "We shall overcome," because somehow we know the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. We shall overcome because Carlyle is right. No lie can live forever. We shall overcome because William Cullen Bryant is right. Truth crushed will rise again. We shall overcome because James Russell Lowell is right. Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yet that scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own. With this faith, we will be able to hew out the mountain of despair, a stone of hope. We will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood and speed up that day when all of God's children all over our nation and the world will be able to walk the earth as brothers and sisters. And then we can sing, in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Please turn now in your great hymnal to number 169. We shall overcome. Please rise.
I invite you now to join me in extinguishing our chalice. You can find the words in the order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. For these we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Now I'm going to fast forward to 2020 and read an excerpt from Amanda Gordon's poem delivered at Biden's inauguration called The Hill We Climb. I'm just going to read the last, 4 or 5 sentences. I think she believes in beloved community. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the golden hills of the West. We will rise from the windswept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When the day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there's always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.